Okay, thank you very much. Now I think I probably have to press green, and there we go. So the first thing I want to say is thank you for having me, thank you for listening. I'm very conscious that the majority of you here are probably not speaking English as a first language, so I hope you can understand. Some of the things I'm going to say might be quite subtle. I want to start by talking about the importance of innovation, the importance of understanding how digital innovation can really add value. I wanted to give you an example of how I think technology should work. Okay? If you go back to the 1970s, 1980s, if you remember when you used to drive cars from the 1980s, magically, instead of having every 8,000 kilometers or 8,000 miles your car requires servicing, magically a light appeared that would come on and tell you that your car needed to be serviced. Now that level of technology was about the car had simply done the right number of miles. Not all of you are going to remember this. And then as if by magic, along came Mercedes, BMW, and lots of other high-end manufacturers, and they came up with a thing called condition-based maintenance. The point being that your car is serviced when it needs servicing. Now, my wife drives a BMW X5, 5-litre V8 petrol, wonderful car, recommend them. One day I borrowed this car. I jumped into the car, I pressed the button, the car fires up, and it said 50 miles of petrol left. The condition-based maintenance system was telling me it had 50 miles to go. By the time I'd done 200 meters and I was at the end of the road, it was flashing 8 miles. Right, 3 of you understood that. Intelligent condition-based maintenance. For those of you that didn't get that, my wife is a very good driver and I am a very bad driver. So the car was telling me that if I drive it, it's not got very far to go. Now, useful technology, digital technology we can understand. It tells you when it needs to be serviced based on its usage. One of the problems we have with buildings, same thing. People don't know how to drive buildings. They all drive them differently. And I think that's one of the things that we often forget on this march for change, this march for digital innovation. So where do we start? Where does this drive for digital change, where does it all go back to? 1938, believe it or not, that's when the first computers came around. This is after the abacus. Is it the first mobile phone, which goes back to the bricks of 1973? I apologise for the next one. I'm a Liverpool supporter and I'm quite excited about the six European Cup wins. So that was a pivotal moment in my life. 1986, the internet. 1992, the first smartphone. When do we start thinking about how the future's going to look? Did anybody here predict the internet? Did anybody here think that the power of the computer that sits in my pocket today would exceed anything that NASA used to land people on the moon? And I'm hoping and thinking the answer is probably no. So, for me, the pivotal moment is 1975. It's a long time ago. The decisions that you make today will have massive impact upon the future of the workplace, the future of your working life. And clearly you can see from this, what I'm getting at is, as an 11-year-old boy, I was given the choice between learning to type and learning to make tables at school. And every single boy in my class made the wrong decision in 1975. For those of you that don't know, that's because you would be mercilessly bullied by everybody else if a boy had ever done typing in 1975, because nobody had guessed that the interface with digital technology was going to become the keyboard, because nobody thought that far ahead. So the point is that we're making decisions a la Donald Rumsfeld, this famous quote from many years ago, about the things that we don't know that we don't know. So I think you've probably all heard that one. So my challenge to you today is to try and use the crystal ball that we were told earlier on David didn't have. The challenge is to try and find that crystal ball, to try and look ahead and to see where the industry's going, particularly difficult in the digital world. So I wanted to think about digital fitness, what we call digital fitness, how we see digital fitness. In simple terms, the question you're asking yourselves is, does my organization have the capacity to deliver the organizational outputs in a data-driven and enabling manner? We've talked about big data. I think most of the people who've stood up today have talked about collecting data, using data. And at the moment, I'm encouraging people to collect data even if they're not really sure what they're going to use it for. I mean, that sounds absolutely crazy. But we look at parameters and we often can't see what we're going to do with it. But golly, if we could go back 30 years and collect retrospectively all of the data on the things we're trying to do today, imagine what a different world we would live in. For example, we've constructed in the basement of the Ministry of Defence in London a condition-based maintenance system. This is not new anymore. We did it 10 years ago, 8 years ago, and we've been collecting data on some of the big plant that sits and serves the headquarters in Whitehall. Basically, the objective, as you've probably gathered, is to predict the failure of some of the large assets. And these are assets that are sort of 200,000 euros. These are pumps, air conditioning units. So that system relies on data to improve its predicting ability. Without that data, we're guessing. The more we collect, the bigger the data set, the more we smooth out the curve, and the more accurately we can actually say this does or does not need maintenance or replacing at any time. The problem we've got is that research in facilities management specifically exists, and if you want to read research on building information modeling as it feeds in facilities management, then I've written several papers on that. You can read those online at your leisure. But today, I found something that I thought was quite telling, probably more so than some of the things that we've produced at University College London. There's a report from PricewaterhouseCoopers that came out this year, which I thought today was worth putting in front of you because it really makes interesting reading. So PwC look at digital transformation as new ways of solving problems, creating unique experiences for customers, employees, accelerating business performance. We're probably not going to argue with that. But here's the interesting thing. If you take a close look at that, organizations are digitally ready. Organizations that are geared up for the revolution that's here. Let's make no mistake. We're living in it. Some of us just can't see where we are. Look at how the dynamic organizations, the ones that are geared up, perform in terms of service operations, service models, ways of working, the vision of the organization, the roadmap, and stakeholder engagement, as against the organizations, the actives are the ones that are probably like most organizations, they're sort of half in, half out. Now, we work with a lot of research clients in London and around the UK, and there are two types. Fortunately, well, we don't tend to work with the ones that are not on board, if you like, at all. But there are ones that are all in. And these are the ones that PwC are saying from their latest research are going to be the ones that are at the cutting edge in many, many different ways. So what I'm saying here is there may be more to not being a dynamic organization than you at first thought. You can pick up that report online, fairly easy to find. 89% of those organizations have distinct advantages from gearing up for the digital era now as against the rest, much lower. That is really significant find, I think, from this. Now, there's loads more in this PwC report, so I encourage you to get on and read it. I could reel off the statistics. It's a fairly long and involved report, but fascinating read. But I wonder whether digital has another dimension that we haven't been thinking about. So, for PwC, it's all about these points. Going all in, not holding back. Getting the buy-in at the highest level, getting the investment that's needed, because we all know that this doesn't just happen without resources. Going all in, upskilling new talent, finding the right fit for the emerging technologies that are out there. So being aware of what's on the market, what's free, what have we got to invest in? Investing in the right platforms, always difficult. Enabling the organization to act in real time, fast decisions, quick decisions. Because we live in an instant gratification world, do we not? Instant message, instant decisions. So keeping up with that. Actively engaging decision makers and collaborating in order to align in consolidation. Now, what I wanted to say was, the next dimension for me, it's too late almost for some of the beginners. I mean, don't despair if you're not there. But I think the catch-up is going to be so hard. The world is flying ahead with digital. We're at the point where we nearly can join the whole thing up. And so if you're not on board, I would run for all you're worth. But it's almost too late. I talked about the interface earlier on with the keyboard, and in many ways, that's old-fashioned. How we interact, how the digital world interacts with us, that's yesterday's problem. We may not have solved it yet, but it's a known unknown. What I'm thinking about is what's round the corner. And it's about immersion for me. So, apologies for using a Hollywood film. Maybe it's Hollywood, but it's certainly a film. But if any of you haven't seen this, the concept is perfect knowledge of the world. So that every time you look at a person, you have perfect knowledge of that individual. I haven't got time to really go into that. But it's not a very good film, sadly, but it's a fascinating concept. I wish I could sell it better than that, but I can't. So this is about, in FM, really briefly, the building knows you. The interface there that I'm reluctant to talk about is about the building recognizing you. Yes, we're in the world of artificial intelligence. So this is where the future sits. The building can respond to your presence. This happens in places like the Edge across in Amsterdam. The building recognizes you and does certain things for you, but we're talking about on a much larger scale, I think, into the future. Anticipating, meeting your needs, it can see your calendar, it can tell you where to go, these sorts of things. But the most important thing is, like the X5, it's a seamless transition. That car recognized a bad driver and told me to stop pressing hard on the right-hand pedal. Yeah? So that is what separates useful technology, user-friendly technology, from some of the really difficult-to-use systems that we've got. And it isn't just about the workplace, it's about a lot more. And really quickly, because I've only got a few seconds left, the way in which UCL has responded to this is that we've completely revamped our facilities management program. We switched it off in 2016. We spent a year rebuilding it. We relaunched. Look at the response in terms of our student applications. We've gone from a handful of applications in 2016. This year, we're heading for well over 400 people who are wanting to do facilities management in the digital age. We've lit up the interest from around the world. It's quite incredible, the difference there. And if that isn't telling, I really don't know what is. Our research projects have also largely become digital in nature. 15 years ago, we were being asked to do catering strategies, sustainability strategies, and now people are just coming to us saying, we want more of these, understanding what are these Kobe data drops that you keep talking about from BIM models. More of that. It's the future. You can't ignore it. You can't ignore digital. It's coming. It's that's going to give you the competitive edge. And just remember, it's the things that we don't know that are going to hit us and cause us problems. So thank you very much.